the Moonies? Moonies are people who believe that we did not land on the moon. Okay, so they don't make that assumption. They don't accept it.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, well, I call it in this channel. Okay, so here's a couple of issues that these people raised, not only with respect to the moon, but with respect to the ISS, which I raised as an issue, and a couple others like the Challenger and the Columbia disasters. Here's the question. One fellow just says, "We didn't go, Bill. You haven't said anything. You just give me your opinion. Unless you fill that up with a little more, we have nothing."
Why you even address it?
Well, no, but a lot of people make comments like that, and I mean, I think some of these people are just wasting their time. Why even write 4 words when you said absolutely nothing? You just gave an opinion. You just voted. That's all you did. That's religion. Then another fellow says, "Why on earth do you still believe in a retroreflector on the moon?" Well, the first thing you have to understand is that you do not need humans. In this case, Apollo 14 and 15, where they placed, allegedly, for those who believe we went to the moon, that's when they placed the retroreflector on the moon, okay? But the Russians put a retroreflector on the moon without ever putting a human on the moon, a Russian, on the moon. They did it all artificially with, robots. So the first thing you have to understand, you do not need a human to go in there and put that little device on the moon, okay? And so the only question there is, did we ever send a rocket to the moon? Any probe or anything? That's the issue, okay? So forget about humans if you're thinking about a human placing it there. That's all I'm saying here. And then the other fellow said, with technology being what it is today, holographic projections could be quite convincing on a scale we are unaware exists. Okay, this guy's just putting things beyond our reach, saying, well, we don't know all the things that they have out there, so maybe it happened, maybe it did not. He's referring to the ISS. He's saying that it could be a hologram.
They're so good at faking things, we'll never know anything is true.
Yeah, so
they just gave up.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's all they're doing. They're putting it beyond the reach. It's like saying, well, we don't know everything, and so by doing so, they're just putting it beyond the reach. Whatever you answer, he's going to say, well, we don't know everything.
Well, he just gave up.
Yeah, that's all he's saying. But all I'm saying here is that thing up there, hopefully it's not a hologram. I mean, if you can't tell the difference between a hologram and the real device when you focus, with your binoculars, okay, these are pair of binoculars, okay, I encourage people to buy them, or a telescope, and you'll see the ISS up there with your own eyes. You do not have to believe it's there, or you'll see some of the arguments people made on whether the ISS is up there to begin with.
Why would they,
I mean,
why would they spend so much money to even make a hologram? Assuming it were a hologram, you know how hard it would be to and for no reason, we just have a hologram going around Earth.
No,
just to trick one dude.
Imagine what that is. A hologram would be focused from the ground, right? Some kind of laser or whatever, and you focus it at the sky, but imagine now that from there, going all around the Earth.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Or maybe
No, maybe it's from a satellite.
No, because they don't believe in satellites.
Right, I know, that's what I mean. Maybe it's from a satellite.
So it's just a car that's going really fast, or a plane. Like, why would they bother?
Well, they say they're trying to fool us. All these people who govern the world, they're trying to...
Oz has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, anyways, one individual says, what does the ISS existing have to do with the moon landings? And another fellow says, the ISS is not the moon. Why the reference? And so we have to... these folks did not listen to the whole thing. Obviously, they just got a piece. We have to go there first. Okay, and I'll go with
before we get to the moon. Let's start with orbit.
Let me go with. Let's go back to Napoleon. Okay, here's the $1 million question for you. Can you prove that Napoleon went to Waterloo? Okay, can you prove that?
To whom?
To me, to a conscious person like this. Well, sometimes I'm conscious. Can you prove that? What are you going to put? I mean, are you going to bring the history book and say, well, this is what I studied in high school or college or whatever? Is that what you're going to tell me, that it's in the book? That's like saying, well, the Bible says such and such thing. I mean, so what are we supposed to do? Just believe what's in a book? Okay? So all I'm saying, you cannot prove that Napoleon went to Waterloo. Even if you went there and filmed it, let's say you time traveled, maybe you were one of those few people who invented the camera in 1815, so you had the camera there, who would believe you? You say, I filmed it. Look, here it is. Here's Napoleon at Waterloo. And, well, let's assume you filmed it. You bring it back, and I say, well, that's a fake. I don't believe you. What are you going to do? You say, that was done in Hollywood. I mean, you can go on and on and on. There's no way to prove that Napoleon went to Waterloo or Caesar went to England or, you know.
The problem there is the word prove, but that's a separate issue.
Well, because proof is belief. That means we accept.
You can prove it to some dudes.
Napoleon went to Waterloo on the basis of belief. We're saying, well, it's been passed through tradition, right, from one generation to the next, and we have no reason to doubt that. But imagine if you had to prove it to an ET. You know, he comes here to the Earth and you say, look, Napoleon went to Waterloo in 1815. And the guy says, prove it. What are you gonna do? Well, here's the book. Here's the history book. Yeah, okay. So
but it's like you always say, proof is convincing. Proof is persuasion.
Yeah, I mean, the Indians used to pass it by word of mouth. We invented writing, and we pass it by writing, but
we still don't believe it.
Yeah, and so if you cannot prove to me that Napoleon went to Waterloo, let's now put it in the context of the moon landing. Can you prove to me, right, without repeating the occasion, the phenomenon, that Neil Armstrong put his foot on the moon?
Are you a Moonie?
Well, no, but I'm getting to that. Can you prove to me what happened in 1969? All I can show you, is a movie, a film, right? Maybe some documents, whatever. That's all I can show you. I can try to prove to you through documents, through film, through whatever, through maybe testimony, that Neil Armstrong went to the moon. Okay, but I can't reproduce the event again, okay, and say, look, I'm going to show you that in 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. Here's Neil Armstrong, and let me show you how he did it. I can't do that. And so now let's get to where I'm headed. These guys asked, how about the ISS? Well, the ISS is going up there right now, this very moment.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about 1969. So forget about 1969 because I can't prove it to you. And like I say, you can't tell the difference between Hollywood. Let's assume we had all the technology we have today that we had in 1969. Then they could have reproduced anything that you can imagine, like landing on the moon. They could have reproduced it in Hollywood just as well. How can you tell the difference now between the real thing, Armstrong actually stepping on the moon, and these guys doing it in Hollywood? Okay, you can't tell the difference because you won't believe it one way or another because we're already too knowledgeable, too savvy, too intelligent, have too much wisdom on how these things are done. We've also been burned so many times by government, so we have all these conspiracy things in our heads, right? We don't want to believe in anything anymore, Yeah. And so the issue is what? The issue is that I can't tell the difference between the real thing and something made in Hollywood anymore. I can't do that.
It's scaring me.
Okay, so if you can't tell the difference, it's not an argument against the fact that we went on the moon. So if Neil Armstrong actually stepped on the moon, you can't say, well, that could have been done in Hollywood.
Whether
yes, of course it could have.
Or not,
that doesn't change the fact that he actually did step on the moon, if he did, right? So you're not going to use that as an argument. Now, another of the arguments some of the people made here is that, oh, look at all the errors. In fact, let me get to some of those, okay? Here's one. Here's a couple, actually. Here's one, okay? And this fellow lists all these things, questions that have to be answered. And he lists all these questions. What materials can withstand the temperature, et cetera, et cetera. I think he was referring to the ISS here. But again, he asks all these questions. And I'm saying all you need to do is get a pair of binoculars. Don't ask these questions. Get a pair of binoculars. You have the schedule from NASA. This thing passes around the Earth 15 to 16 times a day, every hour and a half over your skies. If it's not in your region, ask your friend who lives in Illinois or in Germany or wherever to look it up and say, does the ISS pass through there? And the guy will say yes or no. And so if it's a no, he said, no, it didn't pass through here, so it's a hoax. But if he says it's there, well, now you have at least that part. You covered that base. You crossed that T, you dotted that I. But, why ask all these questions? It's much easier to go out there and get one of these, a pair of binoculars and just point it at the sky and see if you can see it. Okay? But here was, I think it's this one here. Give me a second here. Let me look at it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This is what a lot of people have out there, okay? A lot of people have their reasoning along these lines. And what this guy says, he put all this. He says, the Earth is not gray, it is brown. Okay, astronauts hanging off wires. Should have been faster, he says, instead of slow motion. But you would jump higher. And he goes through all these little things that are wrong of what he sees in the movies that are shown, to the world. And the problem I've got here is that, imagine you make a movie of the Romans fighting, in 2,000 years ago. Okay, so here you're the director of the movie, and the guy's fighting with a sword and shield, and he's got a Rolex watch. Well, that's kind of like an error. I think you want to cut that out of your movie, right? And then the scenery is pagodas. Japanese pagoda. So we've got a problem because, that's the wrong scenery.
Sounds like an awesome movie.
So yeah, but then you have so many errors. Do you think the directors, professional people, would have made so many errors?
I mean, they made that many errors in 9/11. You believe it was a conspiracy?
Yeah, but see, they made. But the question, because they did make all these. But see, if you make all these errors, then you say, well, hold it. You mean they made this movie and they had so many errors and none of the directors caught any of this stuff? You know, they were wearing the wrong pants. They were wearing jeans instead of, whatever they wore in those days. We've got a problem. So the more errors you find, the less your argument holds. Okay, they could have not made all those errors. Now, if you find one little tiny error and say, oh, look, the shadow was wrong, and you just hang on that one, well, that's a different story. But when you say the shadow is wrong, the stars in the background are wrong, the earth is wet brown instead of green or whatever.
But isn't that a...
when you find so many errors, then obviously something is wrong with your reasoning. It couldn't have been so many errors.
But that argument sounds like the fallacy of authority. You're supposing that the directors are competent.
I am supposing that they will not make so many errors. They would have checked all this stuff. If they're going to do it in
shady directors.
Well, yeah, but I know. And again, you got all these experts there, and they say, look, we're going to show this to the world. We better do it right. So, okay, so check the lighting here, check the shadows, check the stars in the back. They would have checked everything. Maybe they missed one. That could have been it. It could have happened if they filmed it in Hollywood. But they could have missed so many. If they missed so many, something is wrong with your reasoning. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Okay, here's getting back to the ISS. Again, the ISS is something you can show right now. So forget about the moon landings. If you don't believe in the ISS that's out there, forget about the moon landings. You're not going to believe that one at all. Okay, so let's get to that's why I say the ISS. The ISS is a big monster that is up there, and you can see it with the binoculars. You can tell how big it is. Okay, if you don't know how to calculate that, go to your friendly mathematician. He'll go in there and he'll make all these calculations for you and tell you, look, it's so big, it's so far out, they can do all that stuff. It's got so much mass. Okay, they can do all that stuff. So, if you see it out there and you've got all this information, then you say, okay, there is this monster floating out there. It's orbiting around the Earth. How did it get up there? Hopefully, we went through several stages, several steps. And among them, you have to include rockets that take things out into space, near space, but, it is within, a certain 400 kilometers, that's where it is. But it's something that it had to take several steps to make. You couldn't have, the first stage, just send a couple rockets and send the whole thing up there.
Catapults.
Yeah, in fact, the ISS took 10 years to build. Piece by piece.
According to the government.
Right, but see, they had to take it with the shuttle and so on. So if you're going to go through all that, obviously you got to say, well, hold it. They built the shuttle. How did they build the shuttle? They built it from one day to the next. They just took a 747, turned it into a shuttle. Is that how it was? No, they had to go through all these steps where they built one device, then made it more complicated until they eventually reached the ISS, which you can prove is out there floating in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so this is what I'm saying, that this is something you can verify today for yourself without having to wait for the government to feed the hoax, the lie to you. That's what I'm saying. You can say that men did not land on the moon because you don't trust the government to tell you the truth. Fine, no fake news, But ISS is one of those things you do not have to wait for the government to tell you anything. You can verify for yourself. So if you're concerned about it, if you really want to get to the bottom of it, get a pair of binoculars. We're done, okay? And so this fellow says the following. He says, watch a 747 at cruise altitude with binoculars, okay? Then observe the ISS with binoculars, okay? Then think about that we are told that the ISS is 408 kilometers away and it's only approximately double the size of the 747. The 747 is only around 10 kilometers away. In other words, this thing is 40 times farther out. And so here are the measurements, okay, with respect to a football field. You can see the 747 is a little smaller, but there are 747s that grew a little bigger after this. So the length that you see there is not the one for the picture, but it gives you an idea how big some of these 747s are. And they're just about as big as the ISS. Okay, so one is 70 meters, the other one is 73 meters. The wingspan of one is, 68, and the other one is, 109 meters, and so on. So, they're approximately the same, or maybe, the ISS is a little bigger. But they're big, okay? But what's the issue? The issue is here you have the distance, okay? This is what they look like, more or less, okay? The plane on the left is not really at 10,000 meters. That's what I think. But you can see that with your own eyes. You don't need binoculars for that, okay? The one on the right, which is the ISS, that's seen through a telescope. Okay, or maybe, I think it's a telescope in this case. And I showed this other one, which is this amateur, and he filmed it. And here you see his film of the ISS in the sky. This is what it looks like. He's looking at that. He's photographing that. In other words, he's filming that through his telescope. Okay, so he's looking through the telescope. That's how he gets that. And you can see the image on the bottom right there. That's what it looks like in the best of cases. So it does look like a monster, but he sees it very lightly. He sees it very blurry. So you're not comparing, making a fair comparison when you say an 747 versus the ISS. When you're looking at the airplane, you can see it with your own eyes. You practically don't need binoculars. On the ISS, you do need binoculars. You can't see it with your own eyes. Okay, I think maybe someone might see a dot in the sky on a clear day. Could be. I don't know. Have I seen the ISS up there? Any more than I've seen Santa Claus at the North Pole. I have not gone to the North Pole to see if Santa Claus is there, because I don't think I need to verify that specific issue. And likewise, I don't think.
Looking for him.
Well, maybe I can look at him from here. Maybe he's at the North Pole, But likewise, I have no doubt that the ISS is out there. Okay, but if you have doubts, well, kill your doubt. Find out if the ISS is out there. That's all you have to do. Okay, here's another fellow, and he says, Buzz Aldrin flipped the torch around in low Earth orbit. He talks about hanging on wires, fake footage, bubbles, underwater training exercise. He's saying that he saw bubbles come out of the suit, and he says that was from underwater, So, in other words, that was filmed underwater. They come up with all these ideas, and all I'm saying is, forget about Buzz Aldrin. Do the ISS, okay? And, if you're going to try to show to yourself, right? Verify for yourself that the ISS is out there, then you have to explain that. You're going to have to say, how did that thing get up there? How did they put it up there? Did they do it in one day, or were there previous steps? And that'll get you thinking that, we had to have certain rockets before we could send that thing up there, and that'll get you into the program that says, we are sending things out into space, among them satellites. For those who believe in satellites, a lot of flat earthers don't, because they don't want to believe in satellites, because if they believe in satellites, then you can take a picture of the Earth from a satellite and you would show that their flat Earth notion is wrong. So they begin by denying that we have even, satellites out there. But then, how are we communicating? What's this phone that we have that, that collects all this stuff? Is that done through little wires? How are we doing that?
Little people, little fairies in the electronic boxes.
I mean, these people really go out of their way sometimes. Okay, and again, the guy says, filming the ISS takes almost zero resource and energy, because some people say, well, why don't they have some more films of the ISS and so on? And this fellow says, well, you don't need a big thing there to, like building, when they built the ISS. Imagine what that is. These people are out there trying to build the ISS, and they're going to have just one guy out there, in the middle of nowhere saying, let me film the construction of this, okay? I don't know. Maybe they do have it. Maybe they don't. I have no idea. But I don't think it's a requirement that they would have filmed it, okay? But some people expect that to have happened, and they say, I don't see any film of them building it, so it never happened. Don't tell me that. Tell me if you have a pair of binoculars, if the thing is up there. That's all you have to tell me. Is it out there or not? Because again, we have people with different levels of belief, of assumptions out there. Some people don't believe any at all. Others say, well, there is this up there, but there's no people in it. Others say, well, there's people in it, but they're not floating around. And so you have all these different levels. So forget about the moon landing. Some people have problems with what is out there already. The moon landing's happened in 1969. Okay, so another fella says, and again, it's if they had a pair of binoculars, they wouldn't say this. But this fella says that maybe it's a drone. Maybe it's a drone that's up there. He wrote some other stuff in there. Can you tell the difference between a tiny little drone? Maybe it's one of those from Ukraine that got lost in the Ukraine war that got lost up there.
Well, even then, it's in space, right?
But you're talking about a monster football field size object that is orbiting the Earth at 400 kilometers from here. Okay, so what are we saying? We're saying that
it's a huge drone.
That you can calculate. First verify that it's up there, because if it's not up there, there's nothing to calculate. But once you see it up there, you say, okay, it's so big, it's so distant. You can tell that through telescope. They have all this measurement stuff there that you can verify, and you can say, yeah, this thing is up there. And then all you have to do now is figure out how it got up there. Okay.
Do you have something against the Mooney stuff? Because
putting
everything in the conspiracy pile kind of dilutes real conspiracies. Is that what the problem is against it?
Well, no, this is the issue. The issue
separating the wheat from the chaff as far as conspiracies go. Like, some conspiracies are warranted while others are not.
Yeah, there's a couple issues there. One issue is that, intelligence agencies absolutely love conspiracy theories. That's why they pitch so many in there, and they have people even supporting them, because the more theories that are out there, the less people will believe them. They say, well, hold it, this guy believes in this guy believes in that. I don't believe in any of that.
Misinformation.
And so they go with the party line. And they go with the party line for Kennedy's assassination, the 9/11, and Assange, and Ed Snowden. And so, when you put all this together, you say, well, hold it. Are they just pitching more theories in there to confuse people, and so that people will finally get sick of conspiracy theories? Yeah, that is part of the strategy. But I distinguish, Kennedy's assassination, which happened in 1 second. It's like it was gone. Right?
Did you see it?
And you got the movie, many years later. Yeah, that's one issue. 9/11 happened in one day. Then the next day, the clean-out.
But this one's like ongoing.
But this one has been going on for years and years and years. You can go to Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, whatever, down there in Florida. Take your telescope and see if that rocket is being thrown into space. Just, monitor it with your telescope and see where it goes. See if it just falls, on the other side of the mountain, or it continues going into space. If it goes into space, then you say, hey, we have the rockets to send them into space. In fact, the Russians, I'm sure, are very much aware that the United States can send rockets all the way to Russia through space, through the Arctic, and vice versa. That's why they have all these ICBMs, and they're worried about all that, because if all that is not true, then you're saying, oh, that never happened, that's not true, that's fake. Well, go to Cape Canaveral and find out if there are any rockets whatsoever next time they have a launch, right? If it goes into space. And you can verify. In fact, they film it, but you don't have to take their film for granted. Take your own film. Make your own film.
It seems like the conspiracy theory that everyone's kind of on now is the COVID stuff.
There's always conspiracy theories about just about every subject, from what is it, but climate change and everything.
But it's something that you said as far as the COVID thing also applies here, where when so many countries, which are supposedly enemies, conspire on the same conspiracy, it gets kind of weird. Like, why would they?
Yeah, in the case of COVID, that's my argument, my primary argument against COVID being a conspiracy. You can say that, the United States and Europe got together and they said, let's do this to confuse our people, no problem. But when you have North Korea, Cuba, and, Russia, China, and Vietnam, and all these countries that are, or to some degree Iran, enemies of the United States, and they all agree to fool their own people, and they say, let's all agree, all these countries, 170, 180 countries in the world, and
but the same thing applies to space travel. Why would Russia and the U.S. both conspire to say that we got people on the moon?
Well, they do have that, where I discussed that because someone said, well, Russia and the United States, or Soviet Union in those days, right, and the United States got together and they agreed that they were going to fool the whole world, that they sent probes into space, that Gagarin went around the Earth first man, and Tereshkova, the first woman, Laika, the first dog, And then there was this turtle that they sent also all the way to the moon, went around the moon and came back. A turtle, that's the first living entity that went through the Van Allen belts and so on. Okay, and so we have all these cases, and then it turns out that it was the Americans that sent the first humans to the moon. And it turns out that the Americans never doubted, never even questioned whether, Gagarin, Tereshkova, Laika went into orbit, and the Russians never questioned that Armstrong was the first man on the moon.
Yeah.
It's like, and you would say, well, is it that they agreed, they were such friends, these two countries, that they decided to, all the politicians on both sides, and astronauts and so on, they all decided that, hey, let's all be on the same page, let's all fool the world. Is that what happened? I doubt it between enemies, but that's what people believe out there, that in secret, all these people are not enemies, they're all friends. And here you have Putin, he's killing people in Ukraine. The Americans are feeding the Ukrainian army with the weapons to kill Russians. But all these guys are drinking vodka and champagne, and getting together and having a party while all these people are killing themselves. I don't think so. I think they're true, genuine enemies. But if you believe otherwise, I can't help you. Go to Ukraine and find out.